One of the most important components of the cell is the membrane itself, right? So this membrane is what isolates the internal compartment of the cell from the external compartment of the cell. And we know that the membranes of cells are made up of a phospholipid bilayer. So we have these phosphate heads, right? Then we've got these lipid tails. And this organization creates a bilayer where we have sort of phosphate heads over here as well, and the tails face the interior of that membrane. And so because of that, what happens is you end up with a region that is hydrophobic or water hating, right? Or fearing. And you end up with regions on the intracellular side that are hydrophilic. Same thing over here. This is hydrophilic as well. Okay. And so that creates an interesting sort of setup for some different membrane proteins and the way the proteins interact with the membrane itself. So you can have a membrane. So let's draw a little bit of a more simplistic membrane. And I'm going to just sort of draw it like this. There. Maybe something like this. And then we'll draw the tails. Now, some of these proteins can sit on the hydrophobic side, and some of them can sit on both the hydrophobic and hydrophilic regions. So we break them into two main classes that we talk about when we talk about membrane proteins. We can talk about peripheral proteins, and we talk about integral proteins. Okay? Your peripheral proteins are found on the periphery of the membrane. So they will set sort of like this, right? Or they can just be really on the surface, and we call them surface proteins, right? So because of that, right, your peripheral proteins are going to be hydrophilic. Okay? They're going to stay within that hydrophilic region. Now, your integral proteins, we can have an integral protein where it sort of sets like this, right? Or we can have one that spans the entire membrane, like so. Right? So in purple, we consider this an integral protein, right? This is just an integral protein, and it has a hydrophilic region, and it has a hydrophobic region. Okay? In green, this is what we refer to as a specialized integral protein known as a transmembrane protein, because it spans the entire membrane. If we consider this out here, our extracellular side, and this here in our intracellular side, notice that it is exposed to the extracellular environment and the intracellular environment. So it spans the entire membrane, so it's a transmembrane protein. So it is going to have hydrophilic regions, and it's going to have a hydrophobic region as well. Okay? And so these proteins will be incredibly important for understanding membrane dynamics. These membranes, right, are responsible for doing a variety of different things inside of the cell. They have a whole bunch of functions. But what are the functions of these proteins? Well, they can act in transport. This is really what those transmembrane proteins do. They can move things in and out of the cell. They can function as enzymes, right? So remember, enzymes are molecules that speed up the rate of a chemical reaction by lowering the activation energy. They can be involved in signaling pathways, which we call signal transduction. That's basically a flow of information. They can be involved in cell-to-cell recognition. Right? So how do you recognize what a cell is for your own body? They can join cells together. So think of your nexus junctions, the connexons. Those are membrane proteins. Or they can be involved in attachment for things. So think about your desmosomes, your hemidesmosomes, right? The adherent, the cadherin proteins are membrane proteins. So these membrane proteins do a lot of stuff, and they're going to be vital for your understanding of cellular dynamics, how the cells work, and then how that can play a role into how the organism works, and especially if you want to enter the medicinal field, right, and how some medicines may work. So take some time, review your membrane proteins, and I'll see you in the next video.